Thanks, J&B. We're the Gridiron 360, the only sports show that gives you real sports, real talk. We got a great show lined up, so don't go anywhere.
Today is a special day. Today we gather as a nation and as an international community to recognize the selfless decision of one of the most influential women of our time. She's been recognized by religious figures and politicians around the world. To us, she's just Rachel. But to the rest of the world, she's the woman who, after having one too many drinks, chose not to drive home buzzed. Here today to honor Rachel is the family whose lives she spared.
Welcome to Gridiron 360, the only, and we like to say only, sports show conducted by former NFL players that give it to you real. I'm your host, Sammy Davis, former first-round draft pick from the San Diego Chargers. To my right, we got a special guest, Ricardo McDonald, straight out of the University of Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. By
way of Jamaica, who played linebacker actually for the Chicago Bears. To my left, we got the old Boomer Sooner, Ben Cavil, straight out of the University of Oklahoma, played offensive tackle for the Baltimore Ravens. And back with us again for a second time, we got Dr. Cavil, straight from Texas Southern University, sports analyst, and he knows all that needs to know about sports. You go to this man right here. We got a great show lined up, guys, so let's go and jump into it. You ready?
Ready.
Mm-hmm. Well, a report came out. I think there's some trouble. Some guys pretty worried up in Indianapolis. They think Peyton Manning's not going to be ready for this upcoming season.
Well, I just believe that Peyton Manning is just a phenomenal quarterback. And I think, when it comes time for week one against the Texans, I mean, there's absolutely no doubt. I'll put it this way. I'll sell my mortgage, I'll sell my house if he doesn't suit up on week one. Because I think that this guy gives them the very best chance to win. Without him, like I said earlier, that they're basically a 1-15 team.
Physically, mentally, I'll say Peyton Manning will be ready. This is a guy that studies the game. This is a guy that was as a young fella, his father taught them how to watch film and study the game, study defense. So mentally, he is going to be ready. Physically, if he's ready to take some of these hits, I don't know. But as we know, Indianapolis will make some adjustments. I think we'll see more 3-step drops, a few 5-step drops. I don't think we're going to see any 7s. But I think we'll see, as he's done before. And this is a problem that's happened to him before. But after surgery and all and coming back, I don't think Peyton Manning needs training camp.
Well, how worried are the Indianapolis Colts organization right now? Because we don't really know who their backup quarterback is. Just imagine having to start your season with a guy nobody knows.
Painter? Yeah.
Painter?
Yeah, Painter.
And for the last 7 years, I think when you look at the dynamic of it, this guy holds the second longest healthy streak in the NFL. Besides Brett Favre. So, you're looking at a guy who for the last 11, 12 years has been basically an Iron Man. I think in the end, you're going to see him come out there in week one and basically do what Peyton always does, basically win ball games.
Right. Yeah, I think the Colts are worried.
The
organization.
Oh, I know they're pretty worried. Now, there was another report that came out of NFL. They've approved the whole game day testing for performance enhancement drugs. And this is not just, the urinating in a cup. This is actually taking blood.
That's correct.
On game day.
That's correct.
How worried should the guys be about that?
Now, I don't think the guys are worried. I think it's going to they're saying it's not going to take away from the game day aspect. My personal opinion, I'm not against them testing. I'm not against them testing for HGH, steroids. I believe it needs to be tested at the beginning of the year. Testing on game day, that's something that, a lot of guys are probably not going to like, especially if you might just get tapped. You're getting your mind ready for the game. You listen to your music or whatever going over the plays, then they tap you on the shoulder, hey, come on in here.
Right.
And you got to take some blood. To me, I don't think it should be done on game day. My personal opinion.
As a fan, I look at it from the perspective, I'm like, I could really care less. I don't know if that's really politically correct to say for television. And what I'm interested in from the perspective is, will it change my game day experience watching the game in terms of how they deliver on the field? As experts that have been in it, is it going to change anything that I'm watching?
Well, I think both of you make two great points, but I think that when you look at the framework, I'm a big fan of this because as one of the things that you've seen with a lot of the supplements that's been on the market, I mean, a guy could basically take a supplement roughly at 8 o'clock in the morning. By 10 o'clock at night, it's out of his system. Right. And so a lot of these guys, for those 3 to 4 hours that you're there, I mean, it's a maximum amount of vitamins or a supplement that you need within your body to basically be at peak performance. After that, the majority of guys are like, look, whatever happens after, who cares? Who gives a crap? But I'm giving the very best performance to either get the next big contract or basically be able to go out and into the city and perform at a very high level.
Right. Now, a subject I want to bring up, something that came out in the news. The LA Council, they've approved the framework for an NFL venue. Now, we all know the type of city LA is. Stars,
big market.
Would an NFL team take a back seat to the LA Lakers? That's what I pretty much want to ask.
Yes.
You think so?
Yeah. Come on, man. We ain't a team there right
not.
now.
I mean,
man, come on.
What NFL now? Come on.
They
man.
had the Rams. They had the Raiders. Who's going to do well in L.A.?
I hate to break it to you guys, but L.A. is a basketball town.
22 NBA championships. Argument is over. Next.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So you don't think the NFL can hold up in the?
No, they can hold up, and they'll do very well.
But it'll be second fiddle.
It'll be second fiddle.
Second fiddle.
And they'll get their fans, and they'll do well. Now,
okay, what
don't
team
let them start losing.
What team is going to go? What teams are rumored to be moving to LA?
I know the Chargers is one of the teams.
And then one time they said Minnesota.
Vikings.
Another time I heard Oakland.
And Minnesota's already came out and said they're not moving.
Right.
Things change.
I totally agree.
What about this team? I wonder if you thought about this. Having a lot of major problems. The Jacksonville Jaguars.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Newer team, so they're not deep rooted in terms of the conference or whatever. They're having major problems with the facility and can't get a new deal, which is, some people say they hold a hostage.
And one thing is, that's a bigger market for Jacksonville. Because Jacksonville is not such a large market where the Jaguars are now. If they did move to L.A., I didn't think about that. That's a good point. It could be good for them.
Yeah.
But I think, when you look at the fan base, I think one of the things, because I was in the league back in '95 when the Jacksonville Jaguars and also the Carolina Panthers came on board. And I think that when you look at those dynamics of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Baselli, Brunel, they have such a history. Even though, they've only been around for 15, 16 years. I think that they've built a nucleus of fan base that I think, for them to move to LA, I think would be a travesty. Even though there's 3 football teams in the state.
Well, what about the idea of just starting a new team out there?
They could do that, but I would think that they want to try to stay with the 32 for scheduling purposes. Is easier to do. So I think they're going to look at moving a franchise. And remember, one of the big things, and they don't like to talk about this, but let's be frank. One of the things the NFL likes to do is make sure that they have new stadiums. And so a lot of times they hold that hostage over, and you still have the owner. The owner may say, hey, if I can't get this stadium, he's going to go to his owners and his friends and say, I need to move.
And that's what L.A. is trying to do, work on a new stadium.
And that was kind of one of the reasons why L.A. left. the Raiders left L.A.
You got it.
Because Al Davis, he wanted a stadium, and he couldn't get it.
Rams too.
Right.
So,
But when you look at the LA market, and I think this is pivotal, in the fact that you have the second largest city in America. I think the last census was that the city has over 23 million people.
You got
it.
They
New York.
Football team.
Granted, football has been doesn't have football in the last 15, 16 years,
which is unbelievable.
Which is exactly the second largest city in America. So I think for them to get back upon the football team, wherever if it comes to expansion or if it comes to an existing team that's currently right now playing. That's not happy where they are. I think it'll basically do wonders for the NFL.
I agree. Totally agree.
Big Ben, if they get a team, you trying out?
Man, no.
You gonna get out there?
No, I'm gonna be out there with my microphone.
I hear that. We got to take a break right now, but when we come back, we'll be picking up with our guest, our in-studio guest, Ricardo McDonald.
All right.
take my hand and start a brand new day. And together as one we'll start to see some change.
Underneath everything we are, underneath everything we do, we are all people. Connected, interdependent, united. And when we reach out a hand to one, we can influence the condition of all. That's what it means to live united.
Welcome back to Gridiron 360, the only sports show that gives you real sports, real talk, conducted by former NFL athletes. We got with us today our special guest, Ricardo McDonald, former linebacker for the Chicago Bears. How you doing, Ricardo?
I'm doing excellent. How you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
You
saw that D. You got that little Barry White in you, man. Have you ever thought about doing any voice?
Yeah, like in the shower. No, it's been great. It's been great. Yeah.
So coming from Jamaica and playing at the University of Pittsburgh, I mean, how was that whole experience for you?
Well, culture shock. Because I grew up playing two sports in the islands, cricket and soccer. My average American probably don't even know what on earth cricket is. No. But it's played. It's a sport. So Jamaica got its independence from England. So it's a lot. It's a game that's played in India and also in New England, and also in Portugal. Mm-hmm. So once I came to the States, I first year that I actually played football. My cousin asked me one day, would you like to come out and play football? So I thought, we're going out to play soccer, because anywhere in the world, football is, as we know it, is soccer. So I went out and we're doing this deal in the backyard, and I just saw, it was the most ridiculous thing I ever saw, where two guys basically just smash into each other. We had no pads on, and I thought it was the most ridiculous thing for two human beings to basically smash into each other, fall on the ground, get back up and do the same thing all over again.
That was your introduction to football?
That was my introduction to it. So I looked at my brother, I looked at my cousin, and I said, you guys are stupid, you're a bunch of fools, and I am in the house. So I actually let them out there playing. And, my brother talked to the coach in middle school, and actually they begged me to come on the Pop Warner League. And it was a game that in the initial, there was a growth period that I had to grow through because I didn't know much about the game. Beyond maybe watching on TV and trying to learn some stuff about football, the ins and outs on it. Didn't know the true intricacies of what it takes to play at the game of football. So the coach took me under his wings. I learned different positions from linebacker to running back. I played it all. And about my junior year, I started getting letters from all different colleges and got a scholarship to the University of Pittsburgh. And I actually visited the University of Miami, Syracuse, had a business set up. Here's something you probably didn't know, to Oklahoma.
What?
And USC.
And he turned y'all down.
Turned it down.
Made a commitment. There's a guy named Ironhead who grew up maybe about 10 minutes from where I did. Played was the first round draft choice out of the University of Pittsburgh and went to the New Orleans Saints, and I committed to the University of Pittsburgh. And from there, I got drafted by the Bengals and played there for 7 years, and then Chicago for a couple of years.
Now you're the I see it on your shirt, Houston Texans ambassador. What's that?
Well, I hold one thing, so that's to my wife, Tamara. My wife is, I mean, she's been great. I mean, from a community outreach standpoint, I mean, and all it is in being an ambassador, basically a community involvement. So, I mean, there's about 3 or 4 different Hall of Famers that actually sit on the board, that sits on the ambassador board. Kali Wong, Jamie Sharper, a bunch of other young guys who just recently retired. So, I mean, even this morning we're signing a bunch of autographs for a lot of the fans. So a lot of fan involvement, a lot of community involvement. And I'm just happy to be a part of it. I'm happy to be in Texas. I'm originally from up north. So right now I'm literally sweating my tail off. But you know what? It pays in the end, in the reverse, in the wintertime where those guys up north are suffering. I'm happy. So.
Right. Yeah. Now, we had this conversation earlier, and with you being a former linebacker and being a Texas ambassador for the Houston Texans, and you're out there watching the practices, and we talked earlier about Mario Williams, and just got your expertise at linebacker on how you feel he's looking.
Yeah.
With the transition. Right?
Yeah, with the transition.
I mean, I mean. Even till, we discussed it earlier, the fact that one thing I noticed was he was very stiff. He didn't look comfortable. And I think, I remember my last couple of years in Cincinnati, I went from being a rusher on third down. And I remember just how difficult it was as a stand-up linebacker where you're looking at different things. You're reading the running backs, you're reading the quarterback, you're reading the guard and tackles. To put my hand in the dirt, I remember rushing off the edge. And even though I had great speed at the time, it was very difficult actually making that transition on third down. Mm-hmm. And so what I saw today with him was just the maturation and the progression that he's going through. Some guys, it'll click. So other guys, it probably not. Now, I think, within the first couple of weeks, what you're going to see is that if he's able to adjust and do well, I think, because I think the defense is set up where if he's effective at it, it'll be dynamic because you could put a guy, you could run him on a tee. There's a different stunts that you could run him on, having him stand up, But if it's not, then I think you're going to see his hand back in the dirt and he'll probably be right back at that 3 technique.
Gotcha.
Now, I think a lot of our fans don't understand out there when you say going from putting the hand in the dirt to standing up.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is that when your hand is in the dirt, you're pretty much just an outside rusher.
Right, exactly. So your responsibility is just 2 things: contain and making that quarterback life be a living nightmare. That's it. So and standing up, it's a little bit more responsibility. Sometimes you have to drop. Might not be as much, but you have to drop. The different responsibilities that you have, and even just standing up. Just whether you're ripping or whether you're swimming. It's just a little bit unorthodox. Standing up versus having your hand in the dirt.
Right. And Big Ben, what was easier for you to do? When you was blocking a guy, would you rather see a guy standing up or with his hand in the dirt?
Oh, if he was standing up, that's easy because you're going to get under him. You're going to get low. Mm-hmm. And Ricardo knows that. He played against us when played against Ricardo. Cincinnati, that was one of our conference games, and we played them a lot. Mm-hmm. So if a guy is coming off the end, he's standing up, like when we played Pittsburgh, and you under him already, automatically. Mm-hmm. They can get low running, but they're going to come up.
So y'all played against each other?
Oh, yeah. We played against
who won that battle?
I didn't. He was on the other side. He was going against the other guard.
Well, you could.
Yeah. His name is Blackshear. I remember him.
Blackshear won that battle.
Oh my gosh! One of my coaches always said, "Man, if you get the living crap knocked out of you all game, you need to go hand that guy your paycheck." I should have gave him my paycheck that day because it was a rough 60 minutes. Yeah.
So. From being out there watching the practices, what else have you been able to see?
I tell you, one of the things I was really, really impressed, and I really, really like this kid. 2 kids I saw that I was really, really impressed. Owen Daniels. I think that this guy is on the brink of being, up there with the Dallas Clark, the kid that's up in Witten that's up in Dallas. I think he could be mentioned in that same breath. And also Daniel Manning. I think he's going to make. And I think what you saw over the last year was the fact that we didn't have that leader on defense. And I think, you got D'Amico, who's a great linebacker, who's a leader within that front 7, but also in the defensive back. I don't think we had a leader back there. And I think what I saw today was a guy who basically was a take charge. He was a principal. He was a sergeant in that defense.
No.
Right, and that's definitely something they need.
Yes, it is.
The way that they struggled in the whole secondary last year. We was able to do an interview with Coach Joseph last week, and he was just saying that they really needed to learn how to trust each other. Yeah. Back there in that secondary, and CA was saying and Ken also said that that's the most important thing that you got to have. Yeah. When you're playing in the secondary, and I'm pretty sure it's the same thing.
Yeah. I think the one thing, especially playing on defense, is 2 things: is being able to be responsible and be disciplined, and also, especially a defensive back, those guys have got to have a short-term memory. Right. They got to have amnesia, Alzheimer's, where it's basically the next play. Because regardless of how you look at it, what happened in the previous play, whether you got beat or you were successful, that you got to basically erase it. And for that particular moment, with that guy sitting over you, you got to do your very best job, not to hurt the ball club.
Right, I hear that, man. Well, yeah, that's definitely something they gotta pick up on. We're gonna take another break, and when we come back, we'll be doing a Thursday game review.
Okay.
loss, it's one of the many ways to fight osteoarthritis pain. For more information on managing pain, go to fightarthritispain.org.
Welcome back to the Gridiron 360, the only sports show that gives you real sports, real talk. Then, fellas, it's been some pretty good games going on. Football is finally back, for one, and I'm excited about that. And we had some pretty good games the other night. I'm pretty impressed with the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, that's my front runner right now. Well, how do y'all feel about that?
The Eagles, you know, hey, it's first preseason game. The Eagles, they looked a little good. You know, I know they was playing against the Ravens. You know, I like both teams. The Ravens wasn't going to show a lot of stuff, but Michael Vick did look good in the time he was in there.
He did.
Yeah, I think he looked very good. You know, he looked sharp. He looked like they got what they wanted to get done. I think that's pretty much what you want to do at this time of the year is get your plays in, get a little rust off and get things off. And then I think it was also interesting to see the backups. You know, a lot of folks start to switch the channels, but I thought the backups got in there. They looked good, and they got a lot of reps, so I thought that was a good thing.
No, I share the same sentiment. I think that's an excellent point. And the fact that I think when you look at, the games, I mean, a lot of guys, like Michael Vick, the veteran guys, I mean, the preseason, I think, is a way for them to basically retool themselves and to kind of sharpen their skill. But, I mean, for me, I like to watch the third and fourth quarter because, I mean, these are some of the guys who are basically fighting for their lives. I mean, the majority of these guys, from day to day, I mean, they're looking at the waiver wire, they're looking at the Grand Reaper. For those of you who don't understand, so there's a cut man, and he basically walks around.
That's right.
And when you see him coming, and he say, bring your playbook. He say, bring your playbook.
Not good.
Coach want to see you in the playbook.
And bring your playbook. You like,
sure me?
No, I know what's
You sure you want to see me?
It's got to be an ugly feel.
So, I mean, for a lot of guys, it's just a way for them to just go out and let it loose because, you know what? Tomorrow's not promised.
That's true.
Right.
That's true.
Now, the whole thing about the Philadelphia Eagles has been they're the paper champions right now because they've had all those big free agency signings.
Right.
I mean,
look at the last signing. They signed Steve Smith, Pro Bowl receiver from the Giants.
Now, can you have too many stars on one team?
I'm a firm believer there's two things that win games. I believe athletes and also coaching. And and I think when you have those athletes, if they're disciplined and they're responsible, and I'll show you a team who knows how to go out and execute, I'll show you a winning football team. And I think when you look at if I'm a general manager right now, I need to go sit with the Pittsburgh Steelers and find out what because those guys they built through the draft, they have a recipe. I mean, you look at the way the defense plays. I mean, from year in and year out, they're going to be ranked number one in defense, number one against the rush, number one against the pass. That's what they do. And I think that so when you look at the Eagles team, I mean, I think part of the biggest obstacle for those guys is, you got all these great pieces together. I remember one time the Lakers got 4 NBA Hall of Famers, and they went to the championship but didn't win it. So I mean, how quickly can you bring this nucleus together with guys from all walks of life, from all the different teams? How quickly can they come together, and how quickly can they gel?
I'm glad you said that because that brings a point. I want the camera to be on you when you say that. Because this goes back to a point where Ricardo and I have argued about before.
Okay.
When you said, can a team play with all these stars? The Miami Heat. I know this is a football show. And this goes back to that. Ricardo does not like it when a team puts all these stars together.
Right.
I mean, that's his opinion.
Right.
I'm one that's really pulling for the Eagles because I want them to, just like I pulled for the Miami Heat. And him and I went back and forth on and on, texting, talking back to each other, and that's something that, a lot of people don't like. They didn't like what the Miami Heat did.
Right.
This is something similar. Not saying they all the stars as the Miami Heat has, but these are a bunch of guys that wants to be on this team. It's nothing different than what he said. The Lakers have done in the past, and other teams have also done in the past. People that have gone to New England. So I'm thinking, let's just put it point blank. The Eagles has done this in the past also, except they did it with one guy. And when they did it with Terrell Owens, they went all the way to the Super Bowl.
Right.
That's true.
But see, it kind of reminds me of, I'm pulling for the Eagles, and I think they will win the Super Bowl, but it kind of reminds me of how the Washington Redskins used to be, a few years ago when they used to try to stockpile their team with Bruce Smith, LeVar Arrington, Deion Sanders, all these other guys, older guys, and paying all these guys that money and wasn't panning out.
But that's one thing that's different about that. They tend to be younger players. But I think what is really interesting, when you said the thing with the wide receiver, originally we thought they were maybe kind of stockpiling. But now there's a question mark when you got the Macklin guy. And we're trying to figure out really what's going on. They're not letting out the information, and maybe it's a privacy issue, and maybe it's not a big deal. But right now, to me, that's a pretty significant question of whether it is. And, you know, Steve's not going to be back, if we're lucky, maybe week 4. Right. Some people saying week 6. So we're already starting to see some of those question marks that we thought everything seemed like it was coming together.
Right, and a great point, because, I mean, you know, Deshaun Jackson just got in camp 2 days ago.
Right.
You know, so you got to figure that within the next week to 2 weeks. It's going to take us some time for him to get, from a football standpoint, you know, to be able to get football acclimated.
Right.
You know, so I think even that, I think is a great point, the fact that, you know, they are limited at the wideout. You know, but I think the biggest keys, guys, is going to be how quickly can they come together and how quickly can they basically be able to move with one heartbeat.
Right. Now moving on to the Denver Broncos and the Cowboys game. How do y'all think that Tebow,
everybody wants to know?
I mean, that was the big issue.
I didn't see the game personally. I was looking at another game, but then when I saw the stats, during that game at that time I saw Tebow was 6 for 7 for 91 yards. And I was like, oh, Tebow looks like he's doing pretty well. But after talking to you and talking to CA, you know, y'all said it wasn't a nice show.
Man, you starting to look like me. You talking about being a fan. You just watching the stats.
Yeah, I was
everybody
watching
else
the stats.
The game said
I didn't see the
game. He just looked so mechanical. He had the interception that was called back looking from a penalty. He had one big play that he bootlegged out to the right and went to the left and made a play. Had some offside, so he looked rusty, and he looks like there's something not going on there just from somebody watching it from the stands. And it'd be interesting to see what is the problem.
Well, I'm going to say this, that I think the Denver Broncos right now is hoping and praying for the 2012 NFL draft, because I think they're looking for that number 1 pick coming out of Stanford. Because I don't think either one of these guys are franchise quarterbacks.
Gotcha.
You have a general manager in John Elway, probably go down to probably one of the greatest quarterback. I don't see a franchise quarterback. And football has gotten to a point to where when you look at any team that won, Aaron Rodgers,
right.
Pittsburgh Steelers with Ben Roethlisberger, you have got to have a franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
Neither one of these guys are franchise quarterback. Now they're middle of the road guys, they're backup guys.
Drew Brees,
right, exactly. You have got to have that franchise guy, and I don't think John Elway right now, if he had to basically put his money on it, put money in his mouth, I don't think he feel comfortable saying that one of these guys are the next franchise could be the franchise quarterback.
So how much does that hamstring with the pick that was a first round pick, right, that they had on?
Yeah, that was a first round pick. So, and thinking about first round picks, you have to get something going with them. But that is the end of our show. That is the end of our show. We'd like to thank Ricardo McDonald for coming out, supporting the show. And we'd like to thank all the fans who watched us today. You've been watching Gridiron 360, and we hope to see you next week.